welcome to another Discussion Friday podcast. Today we will be talking about pagans in general. I've mentioned before that I'm following the Druid's path, and actually I just started recently the Bards training with OBOD, the Order of Bards, Ovid, and Druids, which is the biggest active Druid group right now. So yeah, that's where I am right now. Now, this being said, I just want to make sure that people understand that I'm not making this podcast to recruit or anything of the sort. Far from it. It's not how Druids work. But I still wanted to explain certain things about pagans in general, so that people will have the information needed to start to maybe understand a bit better what is this pagan thing all about. So first, a short definition. As usual, you probably know me by now. So paganism is a term used in the 4th century by early Christians for the population of the Roman Empire who practiced polytheism, either because they were increasingly rural and provincial relatives of the Christian population, or because they were not Christians. So it was a term for those two people. Paganism was originally a pejorative and derogative term for polytheism, implying that it's inferior. And paganism was broadly said to be the religion of peasantry during and after actually the Middle Ages. So the term paganism was associated with a belief of false god or false gods. Now in modern days, paganism is more associated with the worship of nature. The group that are often associated with paganisms are the Wicca, which some of the major component of the Wicca includes rituals, ceremonial magic, and celebration of Sabbath. Druidism is another one. It's a pagan faith with a large following, actually. It's built on practices of the Celts of the Iron Age, and just like Wicca, Druidism includes ceremonies and celebrations of seasonal changes. Another group that is also associated with paganism is the Native American faith. Traditional faith practiced by Native American, they're extremely diverse. So many share several components, including the connectivity between the natural and spiritual world. So this is it's a very broad and very complex because of the different Native American faith that there's out there. But they're all pretty much the same idea about nature and spiritual world. Just know that they are a lot more group than this, with different focus, but all of them actually are related to nature in some way. So a disclaimer here, please keep in mind that when I'll give examples here, it's to be mainly what is known from history and from my Druid point of view, because, that's what I know, so that's what I go with. Okay, let's start this. If you know the comic book Asterix and Obelix, if you played a fantasy role playing game, like something like World of Warcraft, for example. If you're a World of Warcraft player, you certainly have an idea of what is a druid. And this view is certainly biased and tainted by the game, of course, and maybe the books also that you've read. But really, where does this druid thing really comes from? Like, how do we know? Well, actually, we know that the druids were very influential and key in the Celtic worlds. Why do we know? Well, it's fairly simple. Julius Caesar. Yep, that's the guy. And without going into great details about Julius Caesar, just know that he wrote a lot about the Druids. And that's from his perspective that we know quite a bit. So he had a lot of respect for the Druids. He mentioned a few times their ability to predict the future, their vast knowledge of the plant world and astronomy, to name a few only, because yeah, there was a lot of things. But of course, with this, we have to know that he was fighting against the Celts. Julius Caesar was fighting against the Celts in Gaul, which was France today, in Brittany, UK today. And he needed to depict them as uncivilized savages. So I was listening at one point to Dan Carlin podcast. I highly recommend this podcast if you like history. It's really good. And he was explaining at length the takeover of the Celtic region by Caesar. But what I really liked is that at the end of his podcast, the title is Celtic Holocaust, a question was asked. The question was, so the Roman won the war then? And the answer was, well, in a way, yes, but how many still speak Latin today? And how many speak Gaelic? I thought that was a really good one. So let's move a bit forward in time here. I often hear people talking about, well, mainly Wiccan, the Wiccan followers, that people consider witches to be satanic, evil. So where did that come from? Well, remember in the definition of paganism, where it said that it was a term used by early Christians? Well, that's why. The Christians of the time, it was a small fringe religion compared to the following of a lot of pagan in general. So, and they were looking to have more followers. So they wanted to get more people on their side. They focused on the differences between polytheism and monotheism. And in many cases, they took control of certain holidays to show that the Christian religion was not that far from the Celtic ones, or the pagan one, I should say. This led to, with time, of course, to an outright fight between the two groups, which led to an almost extinction of the Druids to avoid being killed. A lot of the Druids, they were already the scholar class, so they joined Christianity as priests. If we move a bit closer in time, we can see that the revival of paganism happened around the 18th and 19th century, which led to an article I read a few months back that shows a research from Pew Research Center, where they find that there's 1.5 million Wicca or pagan in the US. And that means that there's more Wicca or pagans than they are Presbyterians. And by the look of it, more and more people are returning to the pagan belief system. So why are people still calling Wiccans witches and Satan worshiper then? Well, remember Caesar? His war against the Celts? Well, remember the fight between Christianity and Druids? Well, that's where it most likely comes from. Some writers of the time were writing about Druids doing some, for example, human sacrifice. In a way, I find that ironic that the group that were famous for sending people to be eaten by animals for entertainment were fussing over human sacrifice. A very common thing at the time, by the way. And all this with no proof at all. And there's no proof that the Celts were doing any human sacrifice whatsoever. Yes, there's something that is called the Wicker Man. It's a Druid tradition where you build a straw man in the fall to be burnt in the spring as a representation of the winter being burnt away. Caesar was saying that it was to do some human sacrifice. That was some people in the Wicker Man and they were there. But really, I think it's more because of maybe the sound that the dry corn and branches would make when it burns, because it was very, very dry. So you can easily imagine that it was like people screaming. But even then, we would have some of the stories that happen, right? And to my knowledge, there's none. So, yeah. So I think it's really just a question of propaganda, really, to get people to go in on your side. Now, I'd like to clear some myth, okay? Because I see that a lot. I hear quite a bit about different things that are absolutely false. So I just want to put some facts here about pagans. We're not worshiping Satan. Satan is mainly a Christian concept. A group of people worshiping a fallen angel opposing Christianity. Nothing to do with pagans. Pagans are usually well versed in plant lore. In medieval time, it was a dangerous thing to do because, well, you were automatically a suspicious person if you had any knowledge outside of the accepted religious views. So, if you were good with plant, automatically, never know. Salem trial that happened in 1692 in the U.S. revived that idea of the bad witch concept because mainly a few teenage girls who wanted to play a prank on their black maid. And I know I'm oversimplifying things here, but it's still that. And anyway, I need and wanted to cut it short. I can do a full podcast on Salem trial, but I'm not going there now. So in Druidry, we tend to be more neutral, to be able to see both sides of an argument and make our mind on the situation. So, yeah, I'll talk to Satanists and priests and shamans. It does not mean that I like or follow or agree with what they do, but I'll still listen. And the fantasy image that we have of druids is a old man with a long beard. Um, but there's many females druids. Actually, there's even as many female as there's male. We're pretty even. And both male and female are treated equally. Hmm? So that's a concept that was not necessarily popular at the time. I was told by that's kind of funny. I was told by my daughter a couple months ago that and she went like, I don't know if you'll like it. She did not know that I was a druid, and I was like, maybe you won't like this, but I'm Wiccan. So that was kind of funny right there. So what's a Wiccan or a witch? Well, the Wiccans are much more diverse than in their practice, um, but also they respect the same as we do. Mainly idea would be hurt no one but take no crap type of philosophy. So, but it also looks like the Wicca is more attractive to female than male. According to my daughter, she says that there's way more female than male. Anyway, in the group that she's in, not that the males are excluded, but because there are some male witches, but there's still in her group anyway, much more female. And as you can see, that's something that you will see a lot or hear a lot. It depends on each person that you're talking to. Another thing, oh, that's a good one. The pentagram. The pentagram. Just look at, okay, if you look at the Christian cross, it's not a satanic symbol, is it? But if you invert it, now it becomes, uh, well, satanic, right? Satan symbol. Well, the same with the pentagram. If it's upright, that's totally good. When it's upside down, it becomes evil. So the pentagram has a long history, but it was mainly used, we know anyway, by Pythagoreans as an emblem of the perfection. So that's actually, if you want to have a good explanation of this, strangely enough, I will invite you to go and see Donald Duck. Yup, Donald Duck. If you go on YouTube and watch Donald Duck in Math Magic Land from 1957 on YouTube, watch it there. You will be amazed. It's really interesting. I really like the way they presented that. And I like Donald Duck, so. And no, we do not. Oh, that's a question that I was asked a couple times. No, we do not necessarily all go naked in a forest to have sex. Mm-mm. No, we can, and I'm sure some do, but it's not certainly. It's certainly not something compulsory for everybody. Far from it. It's yeah. We respect nature, and the best we can, of course. And most of us are usually friendly. People from all walks of life are pagans. You'd be surprised. It's not a hippie thing. You have engineers, you have authors, you have teachers, you have mechanics, you have all kind of people, all walks of life. I sure hope that it gives the people that are interested enough to get the info to start doing your own research again. Talk to people. If you don't know what
a pagan group is, just go and find somebody from that group and ask questions. It means just that you're interested to know more. Doesn't mean that you want to change anything. And if you do, well, that's good. And if you don't, well, that's good too. So, you know what? I'd be very happy if this small introduction would help people to sort out the lies and disinformation going around about pagans. So, and with those words, so as usual, I'd say thank you for listening. Much love, take care, and see you all later.